What does it take to turn a room full of intelligent, well-meaning people into a collective that endorses something none of them would have accepted alone? Not through coercion, not through deception from the outside, but through a process so quiet, so socially fluent, that the people inside it rarely notice it happening until the decision has already been made and the consequences have already begun. This is not a story about other people. This is a story about a documented mechanism, one that operates inside human groups with the consistency of a physical law. And the reason it deserves your full attention is not because you might encounter it, it is because you already have. Individual rationality does not protect against collective irrationality. In some specific and measurable ways, it accelerates it. In 1974, management theorist Jerry Harvey described what he called the Abilene Paradox. A family in Texas sitting in the summer heat ends up driving 53 miles to a cafeteria in Abilene that none of them wanted to visit. The trip is miserable, the food is bad. On the drive back, in the particular silence of shared disappointment, someone finally admits they didn't want to go. One by one, every person in the car confesses the same thing. Nobody wanted to go to Abilene, nobody said so, and so they all went. Harvey's insight was not that people are irrational. His insight was more disturbing, that groups can move unanimously toward outcomes nobody privately wanted, driven entirely by each member's assumption that everyone else does. Each person suppresses their real preference to match a perceived group consensus that does not exist. The consensus is phantom. But the car still arrives in Abilene. This mechanism, private doubt masked by public compliance, which is then misread as genuine agreement, is the structural foundation for something far more consequential than a bad road trip. Irving Janis, the psychologist who spent years studying the decision-making failures of high-level government groups, named that larger structure Groupthink in 1972. He identified 8 behavioral symptoms, and the reason they matter is not as a taxonomy, it is as a portrait. A portrait of what it actually looks like from inside the room when a group begins to lose contact with reality. The first thing that happens is that the group develops an unspoken agreement that it is unusually competent, that its collective judgment is more reliable than the concerns any individual might raise. This is not arrogance in the conventional sense. It feels from inside like confidence, like cohesion. It feels like the group is functioning well because everyone seems to agree. Then the rationalizations begin. When early warnings appear, data that contradicts the chosen direction, results that don't match the model, the group does not examine them. It explains them away. Each rationalization is reasonable in isolation. Taken together, they form a wall. The group's moral self-image hardens. Whatever the group is doing, it believes it is doing for the right reasons. This belief becomes load-bearing. Anyone who challenges the decision is not just questioning strategy, they are questioning the group's ethical identity. And then the pressure becomes interpersonal. Someone emerges, Janis called them mind guards, who manages information flow to protect the group from doubt. They do not do this consciously. They do it the way any immune system operates, automatically, in defense of the organism. They redirect conversations. They filter what gets raised. They have a gift for making dissent feel like disloyalty. The dissenters, meanwhile, self-censor, because they have already observed what happens to the person who speaks, and they have already performed the social calculation beneath conscious awareness and found that the cost is too high. This is pluralistic ignorance. Every individual in the room has a private doubt. No one can see the other's private doubts. What they can see is silence, and silence, in the grammar of group dynamics, reads as agreement. The phantom consensus grows more solid with every round of performed certainty. The group is now agreeing with an agreement that no one actually holds. By the time the group has committed resources, time, and identity to a direction, the psychological cost of reversing course has compounded. This is escalation of commitment, the mechanism by which sunk cost logic stops being a calculation and becomes a character. To question the decision now is not just to waste what has already been spent, it is to destabilize who the group understands itself to be. The decision has become identity, and identity the human animal defends. This is the inflection point. The room has crossed from making a questionable decision to being a group that has made this decision, and that therefore must defend it. The self-image of the collective as rational, competent, and unified is now the thing being protected. And anyone who fails to protect it becomes, by definition, the threat. The dissenter in this room is not facing social discomfort. They are facing something neurologically equivalent to physical pain. Studies in social neuroscience have documented that the experience of exclusion and rejection activates the same neural pathways as bodily harm. The group does not punish the dissenter out of malice. It punishes them because the dissenter is a mirror the group cannot afford to look into. Their doubt, if valid, means the consensus was constructed. And if the consensus was constructed, the group has been, for some time, performing rationality rather than practicing it. You have been in this room. You have sat in a meeting, or a family conversation, or a planning session, where something was moving toward a conclusion your private mind resisted, and you said nothing, or you said something measured and mild, something that didn't quite carry the weight of what you actually thought. You watched your own voice make the compromise in real time, and afterward you may have told yourself you were being pragmatic, diplomatic, reasonable. This is what the human animal does with the gap between private judgment and public speech. It finds a story that makes the gap feel like wisdom. And yet, the group did not force you into silence. It simply made the cost of speaking visible. And you, performing social math faster than conscious thought, paid the lesser price. Research on minority influence, pioneered by Serge Moscovici in the 1960s, documents something that complicates the otherwise bleak picture. A single consistent dissenter, one who maintains their position without hostility, without rigidity, but with simple, repeatable clarity, exerts a measurable effect on group outcomes. Not always, not reliably, but statistically, demonstrably. The group that contains one person who keeps saying, quietly and without drama, that something doesn't add up. That group makes different decisions than the group that contains none. There is also a structural intervention that organizational psychologist Gary Klein has documented, the pre-mortem. Before committing to a decision, the group is asked to imagine that it is 1 year in the future, the decision has been made and it has failed catastrophically. The task is not to evaluate whether it will fail. The task is to explain how it did. This single reframe creates permission to surface what pluralistic ignorance suppresses. The private doubts become temporarily legitimate. The silence gets interrupted. These are not solutions, they are levers. Small shifts in the architecture of how a group talks to itself that create openings in an otherwise closed loop. The video closes where it opened, in clinical fascination, in the quiet vertigo of seeing a mechanism that was always operating. The groups most certain they are immune to this process are, by every available measure, the most vulnerable to it. Certainty of immunity is itself one of the symptoms. The group that knows it could never be that foolish has already taken the first step toward Abilene. The question is not whether you are susceptible. The question is whether you can see the road clearly enough to notice where it leads before you arrive.